I can still picture the moment like it was etched into the back of my mind. I was standing on what was supposed to be my front porch, staring at a woman who had firmly planted herself between my wife, Mia, and the doorway to our new home. She wasn't just standing there casually. She stood like a human barricade, arms folded across her chest, chin lifted as if she were defending a royal palace. Her floral blazer screamed middle management power trip, and the way she blocked the entrance made it look like we were trying to storm Fort Knox. Not a single golden strand of her perfectly coiffed blonde bob moved in the breeze, and her blindingly bright red lipstick could have served as a lighthouse beacon. That was my grand introduction to Karen, the self-proclaimed ruler of Willowbrook Estates, HOA. She tilted her head with that slow, disdainful smirk that makes your skin crawl. "I don't care what papers you think you have," she said, her tone so condescending it made the air feel heavier. "Nobody moves into this neighborhood without my personal approval, and I haven't approved you yet." Mia's fingers tightened around mine, our shared excitement instantly giving way to confusion. All down the street, curtains twitched and blinds shifted. Our new neighbors were getting front-row seats to the spectacle, and we hadn't even unpacked a single box yet. My name's Alex. 3 months before this moment, Mia and I had scraped together every cent we had to buy our first home in what we thought was a peaceful suburban dream neighborhood. We had done our homework, or at least we thought we had. Willowbrook Estates had good schools, low crime rates, and houses priced within reach. What we hadn't counted on was Karen Peaton, the HOA president who apparently thought she was running her own private regime. Instead of a homeowners association, the real estate agent had casually mentioned that the HOA was active, like it were supposed to be a selling point. "They keep the neighborhood beautiful," she'd said. "Property values stay stable," she'd added. What she conveniently left out was that Karen treated every new resident like a criminal who had to clear her personal background. Check before daring to exist in her kingdom. Karen had been president of the HOA for 7 long years, and in that time, she'd transformed what should have been a simple community group into her own little dictatorship. She enforced unwritten rules that appeared nowhere in the official bylaws, ran secret committees only she knew about, and had a web of nosy neighbors who reported every blade of grass that grew too tall or any garden hose that wasn't the right shade of green. The morning of our move-in had started out perfectly. The sky was clear, the air was warm, and our moving truck arrived exactly on time. Mia was practically glowing with excitement as we pulled into the driveway. We'd planned this day for months, organizing every detail, taking time off work, and daydreaming about finally living in a house we could call our own. That bliss lasted exactly 15 minutes. As soon as the movers started unloading boxes, Karen emerged as if she'd been hiding behind a shrub, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. She strode across her flawlessly trimmed lawn in those absurdly tall heels that clicked against the pavement like an executioner's drumbeat. Clipboard in one hand, a stuffed folder in the other, she looked ready to conduct a corporate takeover. "Excuse me," she barked in a shrill voice that could have cracked glass. "You cannot proceed with this move until I've reviewed your application and conducted the proper vetting procedures." Tony, the head mover, a broad-shouldered guy who'd probably seen just about every kind of neighborhood crazy in his 2 decades on the job, froze mid-step. The look on his face said it all. What on earth is happening right now? Trying to stay calm, I walked over with what I hoped was a friendly, non-confrontational smile. Surely this was just a misunderstanding. "Hi, I'm Alex, and this is my wife, Mia," I said. "We closed on the house last Friday. I think there's been some confusion. We're the owners." Now, I even pulled out the closing documents to prove it. Karen barely flicked her eyes at the papers before waving them away like a queen dismissing a peasant. "I don't care what some bank told you," she said with breathtaking arrogance. "This is my neighborhood, and I have procedures. You should have contacted me weeks ago. Since you didn't, you'll need to remove your belongings immediately and return after you've completed the proper paperwork." The movers looked at one another, still holding our furniture, caught between professionalism and disbelief. More neighbors began to gather, some trimming hedges that didn't need trimming, others watering plants that were clearly fine, everyone pretending not to watch while hanging on to every word. Mia stepped forward, the calmest person I know, but I could feel the storm building in her posture. "Ma'am, I think you're confused about how property ownership works," she said in that measured, polite voice she uses right before she loses patience. "We legally own this house. We don't need anyone's approval to live in our own home." Karen's face flushed into a shade that matched her eyeshadow, a mix of rage and disbelief. "How dare you speak to me like that?" she shrieked. "I am the president of this HOA, and I have the authority to keep undesirable elements from disrupting our community standards. You are not moving another item into that house until I say so." Then she did the unthinkable. She stepped in front of Tony and placed her hand on one of our boxes like she was about to physically stop the move. Tony shot me a look that said, "Buddy, is this real life or a prank show?" "Lady, I don't know what your deal is," Tony said, his patience hanging by a thread. "But these folks hired me to move their stuff, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Whatever neighborhood drama this is, it can wait until after I'm finished." Karen's response. She whipped out her phone and started dialing like a sheriff in an old western. "I'm calling the police," she declared loudly enough for the whole block to hear. "These people are trespassing, and this moving company is participating in illegal activity." She said it without even blinking, like she truly believed it. Something in me snapped then. I'd been trying to stay calm, trying to de-escalate, but hearing her threaten to have us arrested for moving into our own home flipped a switch inside me. The sarcastic, unfiltered part of my personality roared to the surface. "You know what, Karen?" I said, raising my voice so every single eavesdropping neighbor could hear. "You're absolutely right. We should call the police. Let me help you with that." I pulled out my phone, dialed 911 right there on the porch. "911, what's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "Hi, I need to report harassment and illegal obstruction of private property," I said clearly, locking eyes with Karen. "A woman is physically preventing my family from accessing our legally owned home and threatening our movers. She's also making false reports about trespassing on our property." Karen's face drained from beet red to paper white in a heartbeat. She was still clutching her phone, but suddenly she wasn't so eager to use it. Around us, the crowd of neighbors was growing. Some looked uneasy, others amused. Judging from their smirks, this wasn't the first time someone had stood up to Queen Karen. The dispatcher calmly told me officers would arrive in about 10 minutes. Karen, meanwhile, was rifling through her folder, muttering something about regulations and procedures as if she could will authority out of thin air. Every glance she shot at me was a mix of panic and rage. A woman realizing that, for once, she wasn't the one in control. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Karen hissed, her voice shaking between anger and desperation as she straightened her blazer like it was armor. "I have connections in this town. I know people. You'll regret this." It was almost comical, like watching a cartoon villain deliver a dramatic monologue, except somehow less convincing. She was clinging to a fantasy of power that was slipping through her fingers. When the police cruiser rolled up to the curb, Karen's entire demeanor flipped like a switch. She rushed toward the officers with the enthusiasm of someone greeting their personal cavalry. "Officers! Thank goodness you're here," she said in a syrupy, innocent tone that was a complete 180 from the screeching banshee we'd been dealing with. "These people are trying to move into a house without proper authorization. They're violating multiple HOA regulations and refusing to follow established procedures." 2 officers stepped out, one young, fresh-faced, probably new to the job, and the other a seasoned woman with the kind of calm expression that only comes from years of dealing with nonsense. "Good afternoon, folks," the older officer said with professional warmth. "I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Johnson. We got a call about some kind of property dispute. Can you tell us what's going on here?" I handed her everything, our closing documents, the deed, our IDs, and homeowners' insurance papers. "We bought this house, closed last Friday. Today's our move-in day. That woman has been blocking our access, threatening our movers, and insisting we need her permission to live in our own home." Officer Martinez studied the papers carefully, while Officer Johnson took notes. Everything was straightforward and legal. Meanwhile, Karen hovered just a few feet away, clutching her precious HOA folder like it contained the Constitution itself. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez called over to her, Do you have any legal documentation that gives you the right to stop these homeowners from accessing their property? Karen straightened up, eyes gleaming with misplaced confidence. Right here, she declared triumphantly, pulling out a stack of HOA bylaws. Section 4, subsection 2, paragraph C clearly states that all new residents must go through the approval process before occupancy. Officer Martinez scanned the papers while Karen waited with a smug grin plastered across her face. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then Martinez looked up, unimpressed. Ma'am, these HOA bylaws don't give you any authority to deny homeowners access to their property, she said evenly. They cover landscaping, paint colors, architectural guidelines, not who gets to live here. You cannot legally prevent these people from moving in, Karen's smirk faltered. But I'm the president, she stammered. I have a responsibility to protect community standards. These people could be criminals or drug dealers or worse. Ma'am, Officer Johnson interjected, pen poised over his notepad. Are you refusing to allow the legal homeowners to access their property? I'm protecting this neighborhood, Karen insisted shrilly. Someone has to maintain standards. Someone has to ask the hard questions. You can't just let anyone move in. That was the moment Officer Martinez's patience wore out. Ma'am, she said sharply, step away from the property right now. If you continue to interfere, you will be arrested for harassment and obstruction. Karen's eyes darted toward the crowd. Dozens of neighbors had gathered by now, openly watching. Some were smiling. Others had their phones out, recording the spectacle. Clearly, we weren't the first people to experience the wrath of Queen Karen. This is ridiculous, she muttered, retreating a few steps toward her lawn. This isn't over. I'll file complaints with the city, the county, and the state. I'll call my lawyer. You people have no idea what you've started. For a brief, blissful moment, it seemed like the ordeal was over. The movers went back to work. Officer Martinez returned our paperwork with a kind smile. Mia and I exchanged a hopeful glance. Maybe, just maybe, we could start our life here in peace. We were wrong. 20 minutes later, just as Tony's crew was maneuvering our couch through the doorway, Karen reappeared. This time, she came armed like some kind of bureaucratic bounty hunter, a measuring tape, a camera, and a citation book. She started snapping photos of the moving truck, measuring the distance from the curb, scribbling on her clipboard like a parking enforcement officer on a power trip. Excuse me, she announced in her most official voice. Your moving vehicle is parked illegally. HOA regulations clearly state that commercial vehicles can't be parked on residential streets for more than 30 minutes without a permit. You've been here over an hour. I approached, trying to keep my voice steady even though my patience was hanging by a thread. Karen, the police were just here. They told you to leave us alone. What are you doing now? I'm enforcing legitimate HOA regulations, she snapped back, brimming with self-righteousness. This isn't about your move-in. It's about illegal parking. If the truck doesn't move, I'm having it towed. She was already on her phone again, probably calling the towing company. Her vindictiveness was almost impressive in a twisted way. You know what, Karen? I said, pulling out my own phone. You're absolutely right. Let's involve the authorities. I dialed 911 for the second time that day, a personal record I never wanted to set. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, this is Alex from Willowbrook Estates again. The same woman who harassed us earlier is now trying to have our moving truck towed illegally. She was already warned by officers, but she's escalating. This time, Officer Martinez showed up alone, and she did not look amused. Karen was still on the phone when the cruiser pulled up. The moment she saw Martinez, her face drained of color. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said, her tone clipped. Didn't I already explain you need to leave these people alone? I'm not harassing anyone, Karen said defensively. I'm enforcing parking regulations. Their truck is illegally parked, and as HOA president, I have the authority to have it removed. Officer Martinez calmly walked over to the truck, inspected everything, measured the distance, checked for signs, and even verified parking regulations with dispatch. Ma'am, this vehicle is parked legally, she said flatly. HOA bylaws don't override city parking laws. You can't tow legally parked vehicles from a public street. If you continue, you will be arrested, Karen sputtered, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. And then she made the fatal mistake. I don't care what you say. she declared loudly for the entire neighborhood to hear. "This is my neighborhood, and I decide who gets to live here. These people are not welcome, and I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of them." Officer Martinez looked at her, sighed, and reached for her handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for harassment and obstruction of property rights. You have the right to remain silent." The look on Karen's face was priceless, pure shock, like she'd finally realized her imaginary authority had hit a brick wall. "You can't arrest me," she protested weakly as Martinez secured the cuffs. "I'm the HOA president. I was protecting the neighborhood." "They're the ones breaking the law." "Being HOA president doesn't give you the right to harass people," Martinez said calmly as she led her toward the squad car. As the cruiser pulled away with Karen in the back seat, the crowd erupted in cheers. Tony and his crew finally had a clear path to finish our move. Mia and I stood in our new driveway, hands intertwined, as the last of our boxes disappeared inside. "Well," Mia said with a shaky laugh, "that was definitely not in any home-buying guide we read." Over the next few weeks, the fallout was glorious. Karen was hit with harassment charges that cost her over $3,000 in fines and legal fees. More importantly, the HOA held an emergency election. Karen was voted out 87-3. The new board wasted no time rewriting the bylaws to keep any future power-hungry president from tormenting new homeowners. They even issued a formal apology to us and several families who had suffered under Karen's rogue approval regime. As for Karen, she screamed at the election meeting that the neighborhood would collapse without her leadership, that property values would plummet, and that everyone would regret it. Security escorted her out as she ranted about conspiracies and ungrateful neighbors. For the first time since moving in, Willowbrook Estates finally felt like home.